Welcome to another edition of The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive mystery sitting right in the center of the AI world. Where exactly is Google's missing flagship AI model? We're unpacking a brand new institutional note from SemiAnalysis, and honestly, it reveals some truly shocking shifts inside one of the world's most powerful tech companies. We're going to look at exactly what happened to their roadmap and what this all means for the future of artificial intelligence. So let's just get right into the data. Okay, let's dive into this by rewinding just a bit to the Google I/O conference in May of 2026. CEO Sundar Pichai stood on stage and confidently promised developers that the highly anticipated Gemini 3.5 Pro would be arriving, quote, next month. Now, if you were watching or following the industry at the time, you might remember that this specific announcement actually drew some audible groans from the audience. The developer community was eager. They wanted it right then and there. But hey, waiting 1 month wasn't so bad, right? Well, that single month turned into something else entirely. Which brings us to a pretty shocking reality. According to the semiconductor and AI research firm SemiAnalysis, Gemini 3.5 Pro has been quietly canceled. Yeah, you heard that right. Instead of delivering the powerhouse flagship model that they promised to the world, Google has just completely shelved it. It's an incredibly rare move for a tech giant to completely pull a flagship product this late in the game, essentially just slamming on the brakes for a heavily publicized rollout. When we look at this comparison, the reality of the situation becomes glaringly obvious. The expectation was that by early August, developers would have access to a public API, official pricing tiers, and a firm widespread release date so they could actually start building their applications. But the reality? We have absolutely no API entry, zero pricing information, and no way to officially access it. The entire 3.5 Pro rollout just vanished, leaving developers completely hanging and creating this massive obscured gap in Google's product roadmap. Let's move to and see how this builds across the summer timeline, because it really reveals the mounting tension within the developer community. So in May, we had that big promise from Google I/O. Then June came and went, a completely missed release window. Then a rescheduled target for July was also missed. Finally, on July 21st, the timeline shifted completely. Instead of the 3.5 Pro everyone was waiting for, Google quietly pushed out a handful of lighter models. Every slipped deadline only amplified the speculation that, well, something was structurally wrong behind the scenes. Section 1. The pivot to Gemini 4, a strategic shift. So as the flagship model basically vanished from the radar, Google really needed a stopgap strategy to shift the industry's focus and buy their engineering team some crucial time. On July 21st, instead of the heavy-hitting flagship, they shipped these lighter variants, Gemini 3.6 Flash, Gemini 3.5 Flash Lite, and a specialized cybersecurity model called Flash Cyber. Now, these are undoubtedly useful tools that serve a purpose in the ecosystem, for sure, but they are absolutely not the generational powerhouse that was supposed to redefine their top-tier AI lineup. It was just a clear tactical move to maintain market presence. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what was happening inside the company. At the exact same time those lighter models dropped, Google simultaneously confirmed they had begun their, quote, most ambitious pre-training run yet. The analysts at SemiAnalysis interpret this statement not just as an update, but as a massive defining pivot. Google wasn't just delaying 3.5 Pro, actually, scratch that, they were pivoting their attention and vast compute resources away from the 3.5 Pro effort entirely, just to focus squarely on Gemini 4. Section 2. Slipping in the ranks, lagging behind. Now, what's really interesting about the slide is exactly why they might abandon a model that was supposedly so close to the finish line. Take a look at where Google currently sits on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index. They've dropped to the 8th position. 8th! For a company that effectively invented the modern AI architecture, trailing behind fierce competitors like Muse Spark 1.2 and Grok 4.5 is a stark wake-up call. The flagship space is incredibly unforgiving. When you're fighting for enterprise dominance, you simply cannot afford to release a model that doesn't securely capture those top spots. And you know what? The testing data backs this up entirely. During some brief test appearances on the LMS's Arena testing platform in recent weeks, users actually got their hands on early versions of 3.5 Pro, and the feedback was deeply telling, describing the outputs as merely incremental. In the current hyper-accelerated AI arms race, delivering an incremental update is absolutely devastating. It was simply not the generational leap Google needed to justify a massive flagship launch and reclaim its crown. Section 3, the DeepMind Shakeup, structural realignment. Because look, you don't quietly shelve a massive flagship product without major internal consequences. On August 6th, the dominoes fell. Demis Hassabis, a literal legendary figure in the field, stepped down as DeepMind CEO to become Alphabet's chairman and chief scientist. Simultaneously, CTO Kore Kavuku-Oglu was elevated to senior vice president, directly overseeing Gemini development. Make no mistake here, this is the single largest leadership restructuring since the monumental Google Brain merger. It represents a total structural realignment designed to right the ship and get their flagship roadmap back on track.
Section 4. Trapped in the discovery loop, iterating without end. But is leadership alignment their only problem? Consider the number 27. That is the massive number of years that AI legend Jeff Dean spent working at Google. 27 years of foundational, historic engineering work. And amidst this summer of internal chaos and shifting timelines, he departed the company, taking 3 other highly respected senior AI researchers with him to forge a new path.
And the name of Jeff Dean's brand new startup? Discovery Loop. I mean, you really can't write better irony than that. Counterpoint research analyst Neil Shah brilliantly characterized Google's current AI strategy as being caught in its own discovery loop. It basically describes an environment where the company is endlessly iterating, constantly researching, but totally lacking the clear, decisive forward momentum needed to actually finalize and ship a winning flagship model to the public. So the crucial point is, how do they break out of this loop and fix the tech? The structural roadblocks holding 3.5 Pro back were heavily centered around lagging coding capabilities and poor agentic reliability. Semi-analysis noted they were not optimistic these would just resolve on their own for Gemini 4. So, the fix? Google has officially acknowledged these lagging metrics and formed a brand new, highly dedicated DeepMind team whose specific mandate is to aggressively address these exact agentic coding gaps. But rebuilding a flagship architecture from the ground up takes time, no matter how much talent you throw at it. Because of this massive pivot, industry forecasts now place the general availability for Gemini 4 no earlier than mid-2027. To put that into perspective for you, whether you're a developer or an enterprise leader, this means you might be forced to look elsewhere for top-tier AI infrastructure for the next few years. It leaves Google sitting without a true frontier model for a very extended period, essentially giving competitors an open window to iterate and capture massive enterprise market share. Which leaves us with the ultimate question as we wrap up this explainer. Can Google break the discovery loop before mid-2027? It is a high-stakes race against time, against relentless competitors, and perhaps most importantly, against their own internal engineering culture. Keep a close eye on how this big tech saga unfolds, because whoever solves this puzzle will dictate the future of artificial intelligence. Thanks for joining me to unpack the data today, and keep learning.